Well, I got a vintage piece of equipment to show you today. How vintage? How does 1971 sound? And it has MOS chips in it. The Alpha chipset, if that means anything to any of you guys. I'm sure that just the name Alpha 1, Alpha 2, and Alpha 3 will put a smile on some people's face because they know what it is. And it's quite rare because the chips changed to Hitachi shortly after production and they changed to complete different design. I was going to say it's Vintage Wednesday, but then I remembered today is Thursday. I have an old Commodore C108 desktop calculator. I have no idea if this thing works, but it appears that it is lighting up. Let's see if this thing works. I think it probably has some sticky key problems, which was quite common on these. 2 key sticks. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 key sticks. 8. Oh, it only goes to 8 digits. So this has got a sticky key problem. I wonder if we can fix it. This is kind of a neat old unit. This is one of the early calculators, desktop calculators with vacuum fluorescent display, and I can pretty much guarantee you that each one of these is going to be an individual tube in here for vacuum fluorescent display. But 2 plus 3, it works. These were ones that the operation was completely different. Like normally you would think if you wanted to say like 10 minus 3, you would go 10 minus 3, right? Equals. Oh, it's 13. What the hell happened there? It's got a negative sign over here. It added them together. This is the earliest calculators. If you wanted to do a subtraction operation, you had to use the plus key first, because putting 10 and then hitting minus was like entering negative 10. So if you wanted to do 10 minus 3, 10 plus 3, and then hit the minus button, right? So you're adding 10 to a negative 3. And 10 minus 3 is 7, not 6. We have a problem, Houston. Did I enter 3 or did I enter 4 there? Because 10 minus 3 is not 6, it's 7. 10 plus 3. What? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I didn't clear it. I get clear entry. 10 plus 3. There, that's better. This has a clear entry, or clear if you make a mistake, and a clear button to reset it. Anyway, the buttons are sticking on this. Multiplication was the same. If you went 12 times 11, then you hit the plus key. You get your answer, right? For dividing something, 144 divided by 11, hit the plus. You get your answer, 13.09. So it works. Functionality, it's working. But what's not working is the keypad. So let's take it apart. Ooh, an asset number. Asset number 7916. This came from a company. It'll operate on either 115 or 240 volts. Anyway, let's open this one up and take a look inside and see if I can fix the keypad. These ones are kind of unique the way they operate. They're not what you're thinking, okay? They're not what you're thinking. It's actually, the keypad is magnetic on a unit of this vintage. And now I got you really thinking, what do you mean they're magnetic? Well, you'll see. And this was actually done to prevent electrostatic discharge from the human body on the keypad, which was destructive to the MOS chips. Okay, top cover should lift off. Of course, the power supply is on the top. Well, the cord doesn't detach on this. Okay, it's got this great big power transformer and a regulator, and here are the actual tubes. There's 8 individual tubes and a couple of incandescent light bulbs over here for the negative sign, and I guess that one's probably overflow. And this is the calculator board here. Discrete parts, and the keyboard plugs in. As you can see, the calculator unplugs from the power supply. Be sure you get the polarity correct, or you could have a very bad day. And the keyboard also unplugs from the calculator itself. So let's unplug the keyboard, and now we can see the actual guts of this. Look at those chips. Very cool. So there's gold in them there chips. Lots of gold in these ones. Pins are gold, covers gold. These were American-made chips by Nortec Electronics. All the little bond wires would be gold. Omron Alpha 1 NE7127, is that the date code? Probably. NE7126, NE7127, so that's probably the date code. 1971, maybe the 27th week. I don't know. Anybody know the date coding for Omron chips? But they're called Alpha 1, Alpha 2, and Alpha 3. That's the actual part number. Here's a fun fact about the Nortec chipset. Bob Norman, who was the founder of Nortec, he made trips to Japan to drum up business. And when he was away, he put members of his executive staff in charge. In one of his trips, they increased the price of the chip, figuring to be more profitable for Nortec. Although the increase was small, just due to the sheer numbers of chips, it would make a huge profit for Nortec. The problem is, Omron had contracted Nortec to design the chips, and Omron owned the design. And they took their design to Hitachi and had Hitachi make the chips at a much lower cost in Japan. The Hitachi Omron chips are plastic package, not the more expensive ceramic. Of the Nortec making is quite rare. The driver transistors are going to be to drive the 7 segments plus the decimal point, so there'll be 8 of them. And then there's 8 more driver transistors to drive the actual cathode for each tube, because it will be a multiplexed display. So all of the segments are all connected in parallel for each of the displays. So all the decimal points are all connected to one wire. Each of the segments, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc., are all connected to the same trace and controlled by one transistor. So when you're sending the number 1, 2 transistors would be conducting for the A and the B segment, and it would connect to all of them. But the only time they would fire is when the transistor for that tube would light up. And then the next tube would be fired up, and the transistors to light up the segments would go into conduction for that second digit, and then the third digit, and the fourth digit, and the fifth digit, and 6, 7, 8, etc. That's a multiplex display. And if you look at them, they're all driven off of, to be driven off these 2 chips here. So these are your display drivers. One of them is probably the segment driver, and the other one is the multiplex driver as far as driving the tubes. So that would leave this 3rd chip. This is likely your math chip, keyboard input, and your math chip, I'm going to guess. And if we look on the bottom side here, we'll see that the keyboard connector also interfaces with this chip here. So this is your keyboard. Whether this actually does the math or not, I don't know. But it could be a combination of all 3. But definitely these other 2 are going to be drivers for the chip, or for the display, I should say. The display, as you can see, it's got 2 connectors on it as well. You'll see the wires come down here. This connector all connects down to here, and this connector all connects to these transistors here. So one side is going to be for the anodes, and the other side is going to be for the screen or the cathodes. Well, the cathode is the filament, so it'll be the screen that would turn the actual tube on. It would bias it on or bias it off. If we look closely, you'll see that there's a screen in front of the actual fluorescent segment, the anode. So basically what they would do is the cathode, which is the filament on the front here, that has your heater voltage and your negative bias. Usually it's an AC voltage that they send to that as well, but that becomes your cathode. Electrons will stream. It's a hot cathode like a regular conventional vacuum tube. That would stream. The electrons would fly off that heated cathode and be drawn to the positive plate. The cathode are the anode segments that are driven positive. When you want to turn the tube off, you just apply a negative bias to that grid, and that will repel the electrons, because like forces repel, just like magnetic forces. Two north poles will repel each other, but a north and a south will attract. So you apply a negative voltage to the grid to turn the tube off, and only allow it to go positive when you want to light up the electrons, and then a stronger positive voltage to the actual segments that you want to light up. Anyway, the problem with this one is a problem with sticking keys. Let's open the keyboard and see how these keyboards work. I already know how these keyboards work because I took a calculator like this apart when I was about, I'm going to say 10 years old, and it never went back together. But I know where this calculator came from too. I've had it for many, many years. This would have come from a company called General Appraisals. My aunt worked there. She was a secretary, and this would have been her personal calculator that she had when she worked there. She brought me one other time that broke, and I took it all apart, and I say when I was a kid, and it never went back together. When she retired, and that would have been, I'm going to say around I don't remember the year, 1980 maybe? I don't remember the year that she retired, but when she retired, she got to keep, because everything had migrated in the office. Typewriters were out and word processors were in. So that, of course, happened before she retired. So she got to keep her old IBM Selectric typewriter when she retired, and she got to keep the old calculator because they had replaced it with printing calculators. So she brought this calculator home, and she used it for a few years, and then it just sat in a box, and I ended up inheriting it. And of course, I've never used this thing. It's been sitting in a box ever since. Okay, the keys come out like this. You see what I mean by this is a magnetic keyboard? These are magnetic reed switches. When a magnet is placed near them, they close. It's quite an ingenious design, no moving parts. So how do the keys work? Well, each one of these keys has a magnet. It slides up and down in this little keeper. And some of these are sticking. And the reason they're sticking is because if you look closely, you'll see that there's a crack in the plastic. And that's caused some of them to expand a bit and stick. So I'm thinking possibly if I can get them to unstick, then this calculator might be usable. And I'm thinking how I might do that. Not quite sure the best approach to do that, whether I should take the sticking key out, because I can pull the top off it and then there'll be a spring there that pulls it back up, and then pull the magnet out from the bottom, and maybe I can squeeze the piece together and fuse the plastic to hold it together, the ones that are sticking, like the 2 key, for example. This key is sticking. Another option might be to try and enlarge the hole a little bit, file it off a bit or sand it off a bit. That might be another option. Don't want to put any oil or anything in here because oil could attack the plastic. But we'll try it with this key here first. This one's sticking. The clear entry key is sticking. The 7 key sticks. Maybe we'll try the 7 key first. So let's just try. I'll try the clear entry key. We'll pop the key off the top here first and see whether it will. It should pop off the top. Try not to lose the spring while I'm at it. So there's a big spring on top here. Quite a large spring to push that back up. And let's just push the key down and push it through. Now you see, this is what's happened. You see, this is cracked. Also, there's dirt. Maybe cleaning this up might help. because there's dirt around here. That might be where the sticking is coming from. But there's definitely a crack. There's a crack in the plastic, as you can see. And that's, I think, part of the problem. But we'll try cleaning this up first and just see whether cleaning it will stop it from sticking like it is. Incidentally, they tossed most of these calculators for the same reason. They all had the same problem. Clean the inside here. Yeah, we'll just see if this freezes up. If this freezes it up enough, then that may be all I need to do. But I have a feeling it's probably still going to stick. But we'll see here. Okay, put the spring back on. Push the key back down and snap it in place. Oh, that one's not sticking anymore. Bonus. Let's try the same for the others. Maybe, just maybe, I can get away with just cleaning these magnets and clean the crud off of them, and maybe that will get this thing to work good enough that I don't have to try anything else anymore heroic than that. Because the less I have to do to this, I think the better will be. If I start fusing plastic and melting plastic, trying to close the crack up a bit, I may introduce even more problems. Because there's a magnet in here, so we don't want to put any heat around the magnet. That's a good way to destroy the magnet. You can see it inside here. Right. I'm going to do this one key at a time. I know some would say, oh, just take all the keys off. No, I'll do this one key at a time and see if it stops them from sticking. Okay, the 0 key has got 2 of them on it, and it is sticking too. This one doesn't want to come off as easy. This one's got a fairly good sized crack in it, so I don't know whether just cleaning this is going to work or not on this one. I'll tell you guys the truth. I guess we'll find out when I put it back together whether it still sticks. And I'm only going to do the ones that are actually sticking. I'm not going to do all the keys, just the ones that are sticking. So basically, it's just the 2 key and the 7 key are the ones that are bad. The rest of the keys all seem to work. So I'm not going to touch ones that don't stick for obvious reasons, because I don't want to run the risk of causing more damage than is already there. These have to be turned sideways like that. It'd be fun to put this one back on with the 2. Okay, let's see whether this will snap back in place. Okay. That might be okay. The other one sticking is 2 and 7, so I'll pop those ones off and we'll do those. I'd say that'll be the only ones I'm going to do on this, just because those are the ones that are in the worst shape, and I don't want to risk damaging anything more. This one here is also pretty bad. As you can see, it's got a crack all the way around here. We'll see whether this one will clean up to the point where it won't stick. Excellent. And 7 is sticking. Let's clean up 7. And then I'm going to epoxy the broken, there's the, you can see where the epoxy, where the screws go in, it's broken off this. I think I probably can epoxy them, although I don't know if it's necessary. Keyboard's not really going to go anywhere when it's back together. But I could. Not like I'm going to be using this thing. It's like calculator like this. Are you kidding? I got a more powerful one on my phone. An old watch that had a calculator built in. It's got a more powerful calculator than this thing. It looks like when this was new that there was other models of calculators that had additional keys, maybe for memory or something else, because you can see there's additional holes in this mounting plate for extra keys, so it makes you wonder. That one's still kind of sticking a bit, isn't it? That's okay, it seems to be. I'll maybe push it all the way down. Yeah, it seems to be working okay now. There we go. The key wasn't pushed all the way on. That's what happened. It was going down too far. Okay, that seems to be working. So let's reassemble the actual keypad, the circuit board. Carefully reinsert the reed switches because, again, these are made out of glass and they're not very forgiving if you do it wrong. As you can see, the board has lands for the additional switches, but I don't see any traces going to them. So what it may have been was, it may have been a calculator that had an extra key up here, or it may have had, I guess, no, I was thinking maybe it had the larger keys like this for the divided and divide and multiply, but there's no traces going to any of these, right? Like this one here is like the second part of the 0, which obviously there's only one switch. You don't need 2 switches, so obviously that's not connected to anything. Same with this one here, the plus one only has 1 switch, and then this one here is the see the plus key here. I think, yeah, that's the plus. Divide, oh, it tells you what it is, and there's the plus, there's the minus. This one doesn't have anything, so it was probably for another key. Same with this, but it was never part of this calculator design, so they never actually etched a board for it. They've got the pads for extra keys, but they didn't put traces in place because this calculator doesn't support any more than the basic 4 operations, but maybe a different model did, and it had a different circuit board. But they used the same drill pattern, so they put these lands in place and drilled it, because it was probably all done by a machine that punched it. I think it's fairly safe to call this a vintage calculator. I know I called the MP3 player vintage because it was kind of vintage. It was early in the MP3 players days, and I got a bunch of people that jumped all over me and said, "Vintage?" Big question mark. Well, yeah, it was vintage as far as MP3 players go. I mean, they've been out for a couple of years before it, but still, it was early on in the MP3 player. That's what I was getting at. It was early on in the MP3 player's life cycle. And this would have been early on, very early on in the calculator front. So, okay, that's in place. Let's just see what it does. Put the board back in here. Oh well, we'll just turn it on like this. Power on. It's on. Okay, where is it here? There we go. Clear. 90 plus 3 plus 5. It works. Nice, easy to use keys. Times 56. Minus 3. Divided by 2. It works. Excellent. You can see where this used to be mounted. It used to be mounted like that. But the pins have all been shattered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some JB Weld, and we're going to mount the keyboard the way that it used to be mounted. I guess I can only do it on 2 of them because the plastic for this one's broken. Maybe build it up a bit. I want it to be kind of level. So we'll get some JB Weld, and I'll put it in as best I can. Maybe this other one here, I'll take this one out and I'll move it over to this side, just because there's a base to glue it in. And we'll get some JB Weld and weld it in the 3 places anyway where it's going to sit. That way I can restore this thing to as good a condition that I'm going to be able to restore it to. So I've got some JB Weld mixed up. We'll put it on the cabinet where the pins that I've still got are going to fit. Put some here. Put some on here. Looks like somebody's tried to do this in the past and it didn't hold up. And some more over here. And set the keyboard in. I'm going to put some more around the edges here to try and put the light on here so I can see what I'm doing, to try and hold this in place, and then I'll kind of have to hold it, I guess, until it dries. I don't want to get too much onto the actual plastic itself in case I ever have to remove this. I just want it on the metal pins. Now let's find something that's heavy enough to hold this. Heat gun's probably heavy enough. If it'll not fall off my bench. There, that's probably enough to hold that. And we'll let that JB Weld set up. Okay, that should be set up by now. Looks like there was some work done on this power supply in the past. I don't know whether I did this or not. I may have had to fix this before. I should say I've had this thing for eons. So I may have fixed that many moons ago. Anyway, let's plug it back together here and see if everything's okay. Say I'm not too concerned about doing any extra work on it. I don't have to, because this thing being the age that it is, the fact that it even still works amazes me. If we look down here into the power supply here, you'll see there's some capacitors and resistors and a couple transistors down here for various other operations. Got a couple different power supplies because it'll have a high voltage supply for the anodes on the display tubes. It's got a 25 volt 470 microfarad cap, and it's also got a 50 volt 47 microfarad back here. Anyway, let's plug this in. December 4th was when this board was made. And if we look at the chips here, the chips were from 71, week 26 and week 27. So I would say December 4th, 1971 was probably when this unit was made, or at least when this board was designed. So sometime in 71. I'll plug the power supply back in. Pop the bottom cover on it. Don't want to tighten the screws too tight because I don't want to break the plastic bases that they screw into. There it is. Let's see if all my keys are still working. What is not working on here now? None of the keys are working. I'm sure I plugged it in. Why is it not working? Don't see any broken wires. Okay, I removed the keypad and everything works. That's weird. But when it was in the unit, it wouldn't work. I wonder if something was touching. See, one of the advantages of reattaching the little grommets is that I can take the keypad out. That's why I didn't want to make. I wanted to make sure none of the epoxy was touching the plastic base, so that it could be removed again if necessary, which I just had to do. That's weird. Works with the keypad out and doesn't work with the keypad in. That is a mystery. I wonder if something's touching one of the bottom of the circuit board, blocking out all the keys. Because that would certainly happen if something was touching one of these keys to anything metal. It would lock out the keys, but they shouldn't be. There should be enough clearance that it doesn't come anywhere near the actual metal around the display and stuff. So we'll put some insulation tape across here just to make sure that none of the keys can touch anything. These sides got there used to be another one of these rubber grommets here, but it's missing. So we'll just swing the board back in and plug it in, see whether it works, and then put it back together. So nothing metal on the bench to short out. Power on. There, now it's working. Let's put the bottom on it. Alright, unit's back together. Let's turn it on. That one is sticking a bit. Oh, you know what it is? It's sticking on the cabinet here. There we go. That's a bit better. Okay. So, off by 1 year. That was a running joke. I was born in '63. That was always a running joke. 987 plus 654 plus 321. Whoops. $1962. Yeah, so that is working. On these old calculators, if you were adding something and you made a mistake, for example, say you were going to do 5 plus 6, but you hit 5 instead. 5 plus 5. You could hit the clear key and then hit 6. Right? That was the clear error. And this was the master clear, which on newer machines became AC. But yeah, these old calculators were kind of neat. As to say, you had to kind of think about the way you were doing things, because with that negative key, the negative key would always be used to enter something if it was a negative number. So, say you wanted to start out with negative 21 and subtract 12 from it, right? You would go 21 negative, okay, and then 12, and then you'd hit the plus key, and it would be negative 9. It was always the opposite, which to many doesn't make sense when they look at a modern calculator, but that's how all the early ones worked. But a real marvel, and no, I won't be selling this thing because, as I say, this came from my aunt, who's been gone for I'm trying to remember what year she passed away in, but it was 14 years ago, 15 years ago, somewhere in there. But anyway, it was this was one of the things that I got from her. Another thing I got from her, which I think I've still got it kicking around, is an IBM Selectric typewriter. I don't know where it is. I'll have to look for that. I'm sure it needs to be fixed because it hasn't been used for a very, very long time. I don't know where that one is. It might be still here. Maybe it was tossed. I don't know. And there was also an old contometer. There was actually two of them. Two contometers. One of them was a full mechanical, and the other one was an electric one. And that was a mechanical adding machine. And if I can find that, I will show it off. It's around somewhere. I just don't know where. It was in my garage at one point. I had it stored, but I don't know where that piece is at this point. And I have another calculator which I should drag down and work on it. It's a mechanical printing calculator, so there's no display on it at all. It prints out on a 3.5 inch wide paper tag, and it's all mechanical the way that one operates. Anyway, I'll have to dig that one out if I can find it. So I'm finding a lot of this old stuff as I'm going through old boxes of stuff that's been stored for the last 30 odd years, and finding stuff, and sometimes I find some cool old technology such as this, and this is certainly a classic calculator. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one real soon. Bye for now.